Summertime Nightmare. In the summer of 1985, my mother, sister, father, and myself moved into a rural farmhouse in central Kentucky. The house was not in the greatest shape, but it did what it was for. Now, even though my father had served his country for 22 years, he never took the time to attend college or prepare for life after. So when he left the service, his options were few and far between. He managed to find a job fixing copy machines in the small city of Elizabeth, Kentucky, and my mother found work at a clothing store. Needless to say, both my sister and I, who was 5 years older than me at the time, well, we were latchkey kids, but that was pretty normal in the 80s. We were renting that house, and our landlord was an old crotchety bastard. He did nothing to help keep the house up. But since the rent was low, and we were quite a bit below the poverty line, it was all we could get. There was nothing extraordinary about this home. It had a basement, a main floor, and a small attic that had been turned into a master bedroom of sorts. Now, I was 11 years old, so the basement was not my favorite. It was always dark and always spooky. The washer and dryer were there, and it was segmented by a partial cement block wall. It's like someone wanted to do something, but they never got around to it. This house had no air conditioner, but it did have a furnace that almost worked some of the time. So in the summertime, all we could get were fans, and in the winter, kerosene heaters. The house had been rented and left, and rented and left. The crotchety bastard couldn't keep anyone in. After that first year, it became clear why. My experiences started on a Friday afternoon. Mom and Dad were working. My big sister was at school. And as for me, I was at home trying to recover from a flu that no one else in my school seemed to have. At the time, I got sick a lot. On many nights, I would have chills and a fever all night. But then the next day, I'd be okay enough to get to school. Now, my mother took me to the doctor over and over. Pricked and prodded, tested and tormented. But they could never really find out what the problem was. So the windows were open, and I had 2 box fans trying to help in that hot July afternoon. And I'm lying on the couch watching one of our 3 channels that we could pick up with our Radio Shack antenna. As I lay watching some old show, static began to overtake the TV screen. Not bad at first. But then basically, it got so bad that it was impossible to watch. Whatever show it was at the time, I had to give up. So I raised up, pissy that I have to move, feeling as crappy as I am. And I made my way over to the large oak cabinet that the giant old TV was sitting on. Now I began messing with the wires on the back of the set, checking connections, and becoming somewhat worried that this snafu would prevent me from watching my afternoon cartoons. Now in 1985, for a military brat, G.I. Joe was not entertainment. This was a way of life. Now this old TV was a Frankenstein set. By that I mean, it came in pieces, and my father literally put it together from parts of our other TVs as they would quit working over the years. So I proceeded with my examination. I moved to the front, pull out the control panel, and I'm looking at all the... just anything I can adjust that could bring it back to life. I give up and turn the TV set off, just staring at it, pondering what my next move is going to be. As I looked at the blank, dark screen, all I could see was the reflection of the living room behind me. The light from the curtainless window made my surroundings on the tube all that much clearer. Everything appeared normal behind me at first, as my main focus was on my need to watch my upcoming cartoons. But right at that moment, I noticed something out of place in that reflection. A man was sitting on the very couch that I had just left. The fear shot through me like a bolt of electricity. I spun my head around as fast as humanly possible to see nothing. I scanned the room, my heart racing. How did someone get in here without me hearing or seeing them? I cautiously made my way through the house, checking first my sister's room, then mine, then slowly I walked through the kitchen, as it was the gateway to the rest of the house, including that basement. So I skipped that door and went to the one that led up to my parents' room, the former attic. I quietly moved up the stairs, trying to take in as much as I could. Still, I found nothing, and no evidence that anyone was there. I finally made my way back to the kitchen, into that basement door. I opened it with just enough space to flick on the light. Once it came on, I opened the door a little bit wider and peered down the stairs. Okay, that's enough for me. Turned lights off, shut the door. As I came back into the living room, I looked around and saw the couch, some chairs, and that big-ass TV. Sitting back down on the couch, I started, to the best of my 11-year-old brain's ability, to think about what exactly had I just seen. So, he looked to be in his late 40s, wearing a black suit with slicked back black hair, a long face, and he wasn't looking at me, just looking forward with a blank stare. So I tried to reason with myself. I'm a big horror movie fan, and I just watched Poltergeist for the 50th time that weekend. So it was a trick of light and shadow, and of course my imagination. It did not make sense that anyone would come into my house, for one thing, but also, why would they just sit down, get up, and leave? My decision was that I'm simply not seeing what I thought I saw. And once I came to that conclusion, it was easy to steady myself and refocus my attention on what really matters. G.I. Joe, real American hero. I walked over and pushed the power button back on. Lo and behold, we have picture and we have sound. Just then the phone rang, and I hate to admit it, but I jumped a little. It was my sister telling me that she was going to a friend's house after school, and be sure to let Mom know. I said okay, whatever, and hung up the phone. It was the 80s, you actually physically hung up a phone. You didn't just hit a button. So getting back down on the couch, feeling excited to get back to my shows, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was my bedroom door slowly creaking open. Was it the wind? Getting up, I make my way over, only to jump back when the door suddenly juts open, as if someone on the other side grabbed the handle and swings it violently. I took a step, or 3, or 5 steps back, and I could see directly into my bedroom. Once again, nothing. But the calmness that I had obtained from my prior investigation had suddenly vanished. "Hello?" I said, half-heartedly. No noise. Nothing from anywhere. Of course not, because nothing was there. Stepping further back, I was amazed at myself and the level of fear that my imagination had taken. I took a deep breath, attempting to readjust my brain to find a rational explanation to the non-robber/ghost and to a door that, up until a few seconds ago, had never done that before. I decided stepping outside was a good idea. I spent about 10 minutes playing with my dog, looking around. The inside of the living room could be seen through the screen door, but I decided that I would still take a look around. Laughing to myself, it dawned on me that there couldn't be anyone in that house, because my dog would have barked. She barked at everything, from cars to a leaf that might have moved past her in an odd way. Needless to say, she was a good girl and a good watchdog. So after walking around the outside of the place and coming to my senses, I made my way back in. I went directly to the kitchen, grabbed a Pepsi and a bag of chips, and sat myself down in front of the idiot box. Then came the moment where I could just no longer explain anything. Above me, from my parents' room, where the attic had been, I heard distinct footsteps. Loud footsteps, moving from one end of the room to the other. I stared at the ceiling, hoping it would stop, but it didn't. Instead, they stomped closer to the stairs. I moved to the doorway of the kitchen and listened as they proceeded to stomp down the stairs. I was frozen, waiting and watching, and then nothing. I began to ponder whether or not I should call my mom at work. However, I couldn't imagine what would take place if I told her, "Mommy, please drive 20 miles back to the house and miss work, 'cause your son has lost his damn mind." Plus, she would have told my dad, and he was not someone who liked to be bothered with just about anything. So my options were shrinking, and my level of fear is rising. Moving quickly back to the living room, but with my eye still focused on the attic door, I didn't know what to do. Making my way back to the couch this time, paying no mind to whatever was playing on the TV, I asked out loud, "Who are you?" And I got no response. Then I realized that I was basically whispering. Of course I got no response. So I tried again, this time with more force in my voice. "Who are you?" Then I got nothing back. The thought that my 11-year-old mind had come up with was simple. I was insane, and there was no stopping it now. Staring at the screen door directly in front of me, I began to wonder, what if this is real? What if I'm not crazy? What if there really is something here? Well, if that's the case, I don't want to be around. So I ran to the phone and called my best friend. He'd gotten home from school by this hour, and it was Friday, so I told him that I was feeling a lot better now, and I should totally stay the night at his house. Actually, the whole weekend sounded good. He asked his mom, she said yes. I told him that my mom had said yes. And then he said, "Well, him and his dad would be there in about an hour to pick me up. That was going to be a very long hour. So I went to my room, packed up some things, grabbed some Nintendo games, wrote my mom a note telling her I was at my friend Jimmy's for the weekend. If she needed anything, to just contact me there. We were latchkey kids. Because there is no way in hell I was going to wait for 4 hours until my mom got off work. And then another 30 minutes it would take her to drive home. Nope. So, sitting on my front porch, rocking back and forth, just looking for my friend's father's car to pull up, I was getting more and more anxious. But my trauma, whether it was real or in my head, it was coming to an end. But sitting there, even with the TV on, I noticed that everything seemed oddly quiet. I mean, the box fans are on full blast, and the TV's playing, probably too loud, but it didn't seem right. The air felt still, and outside of the fans and the TV, it was like everything else was quiet. The outside was quiet. So, I don't know. It's hard to explain. But I turn off the fans, and I turn off the TV, and all the hairs on my body are sticking up. It was like a current was going through me. And then I heard it. I heard the one thing that just pushed me over the edge. My name. Jonathan. It was barely a whisper, but loud enough to clearly make out whatever it was saying. My breathing became heavy, and my heart was beating so fast that I could just feel the heartbeat in my ears. But then I heard it again. Jonathan. I was in shock. I grabbed my stuff and I ran all the way down the driveway, sprinting. And I had a long driveway. I left the doors open. I don't care. I'm out of there. And I stood at the end of the driveway by the mailbox for more than 30 minutes before my friend showed up with his dad. When they got there, I asked if we could go down the driveway so I can double check and make sure the doors are locked. I knew they weren't. So, after the weekend passed, and after I went to school on Monday and I returned home, instead of having a peaceful existence, whatever that thing was, it had systematically begun to haunt every member of my family. My mother kept having things moved around or go missing. My sister, she would hear whispers in her pillow at night, and she started spending more and more time with her friends, basically moving out. And my father, well, he would often see something out of the corner of his eye. And one night in the basement when he was working on something, I don't know what happened, but that incident caused us to move out of that house and out of the state of Kentucky. Many years have passed since we lived there, and the house has been remodeled a few times from what I understand, and people have moved in and moved out, and moved in and moved out. And no matter where I have lived, I have never forgotten what happened in that house. After all this time, on a hot summer night when I'm all alone, I'll put earbuds in and listen to music. Just for the reason that I want to make sure I never hear my name being called from the shadows like that ever again.